Hello, my name is Eva Malichova and I am an assistant professor at the Faculty of Management Science and Informatics at the University of Žilina. I deal mainly with topics from economics and business in my work, but today, within the CodeIn project, I would like to tell you more about critical thinking, which is very important in all areas of our life. Firstly, I would like to start by comparing critical thinking and criticism. These two terms are often confused. Sometimes, when people hear about critical thinking, they think it is about criticizing. They think I need to find fault in this idea, proposal, etc. And people mainly focus just on these weaknesses. But critical thinking is not only about that. Criticism is also often directed at the person and it brings emotions to the dialogue. In such cases, even if you agree with the person's argument, you may be trying to refute the statement. I think this situation has happened to all of us before. In contrast with criticism, critical thinking should accompany our daily activities. Critical thinking is about making a judgment based on analyzing and evaluating information. It is based on asking, answering, questioning, but also about finding fault, which is only a small part of it. So, if we would like to define critical thinking, we could say it is an ability to analyze, evaluate and interpret data, but also information to decide what to believe. We try to form our own opinion by understanding information in a broad context. People who think critically do not follow the crowd, but they try to create their own opinions based on information and arguments which support their ideas. In addition, critical thinking teaches us how to accept a different opinion. As I have already mentioned, we use critical thinking in our daily lives in different situations. Of course, the situation that comes to our minds immediately if we talk about critical thinking is distinguishing between fake and real news. It is a very common situation in our lives. Currently, we have access to a lot of information, but not all is true, so it is essential to use critical thinking to decide what to believe. Another daily situation in which we use critical thinking is driving a car. Imagine you are driving a car and your phone starts ringing. What would you do? It is a critical thinking that helps to evaluate the situation and to make accurate decisions whether you will take a call or stop your car in a safe place and then answer the call. We teachers also use critical thinking during teaching. We analyze information provided by students, evaluate their work. We need to also decide how we will evaluate students and when. Critical thinking is also used during searching for a job and of course at a job interview. Also when you try to give some advice to your friends and help them with some problems. You analyze information from them, trying to propose solutions of their problems. Critical thinking is also used in decisions in household, for example buying a new washing machine or car. Fun activities such as playing games, for example football, or in self-evaluation to analyze our performance and reactions. Based on the European Commission, critical thinking, together with teamwork and problem solving, belong to the crucial skills for the European labor market. Based on the job portal Indeed, employees who can think critically are considered reflective, independent and competent, and also happier people because they better understand themselves. The good news is that critical thinking can be learned and also improved. Of course, it also means that we can test our level of critical thinking. When you look at the slide, you can see that we have some sort of information there. There is a statement about cycling. I like cycling and I consider it as a form of my workout. The great thing about cycling is that I can cycle whenever and wherever I want, and I don't need a gym in order to exercise. And then we have two statements as conclusions from this assertion. Going to the gym is a form of workout that requires more time than to cycle, and the second one is you can cycle anytime. As you can see, one of these two conclusions is not true. Of course, the first one. Now we can see that some information can be misinterpreted, so we need to learn how to interpret the available information and focus on verification of information references and then create our own opinions and decisions. The process of critical thinking consists of several steps. It always starts with identifying a problem or question we would like to answer. If we are looking for a solution to a complex issue, it is better to divide it into partial issues to make it easier to find an answer or solution. For example, imagine we would like to find out whether cycling is good for our health. We need to define what good means in this case. So remember, the narrower the problem, the easier finding a solution. The second step is analysis. During this step, we should try to find sources with data, opinions and arguments showing different perspectives and subsequently analyze the obtained information. We should identify whether the sources are reliable, their weaknesses, strong points and biases. In our case of cycling, we should focus on papers about the impact of cycling on our health, whether physical or mental, and take into account how cycling positively but maybe also negatively affects our health. Then we should make conclusions and establish their significance. It means focusing on resources relevancy and expertise on which our findings are based. After this part, we should identify different solutions again with all their strengths, weaknesses and limitations, and then decide which is the most suitable for the implementation. At the end of this process is communication. It is a time to present our decisions to stakeholders such as friends, co-workers and boss and get feedback. At this point, the process can start again. Now, I would like to tell you some tips on improving some of the critical thinking skills related to the mentioned steps. In terms of data gathering and analysis, it is essential to practice active listening and empathy. If we want to solve some problem, it is necessary to understand other people's feelings and attitudes. Looking at things from different perspectives is related to this as well. Sometimes, if we solve a problem in a specific area in which we have already formed an opinion, it is challenging to approach the problem without prejudice. However, if we want to make the right decisions, we must approach the problem impartially. In addition, we should not be afraid to ask questions, even basic ones. We should also read more, interact with people with different opinions, train our brain, and build on our previous experience. To improve our critical thinking, we should also focus on our inference skills, which allow to define a conclusion based on evidence and reasoning. As in the previous slide, we can see that these skills can be improved by discussions with people from different socio-demographic groups to understand their opinions, which helps in problem-solving process. Important thing is also to consider all available information before drawing a conclusion. We need to be sure that we take into account all important resources which are available and include different perspectives. Problem solving is also an important skill for improving critical thinking. It is a process aiming to find solutions to problems occurring in our private or work life. As was already mentioned in the steps of critical thinking, key element for critical thinking process but also for problem solving is clear definition of the problem. It is necessary to approach a singular problem because otherwise you can become overwhelmed. It is also important to set up a goal, what you want to achieve. When we are solving a problem from a certain professional field, it is necessary to focus on gathering data in this area and also communicate with experts. They can provide views from another perspective and ensure that the solution will be acceptable, for example, from a technical point of view. At the end of the process, it is necessary to communicate your decision, idea, or solution. To improve our communication skills, and with it also critical thinking, is important to practice active listening. We should be actively engaged in the conversation, understand what people are saying, respond actively, and keep information for later. An active listener also makes eye contact while the other person speaks, paraphrase what was said, watch nonverbal behavior, and show interest by asking questions. During a discussion, we should always respect people's opinions, not be influenced by emotions, and of course not force our opinions to other people. Additionally, we should communicate our opinions by providing facts and reasons. To enhance critical thinking, I would like to also give you some general advices. Working in a team is a great way how to improve critical thinking. In the team, you need to communicate, present your ideas, listen to your teammates, solve problems, and make decisions. It means you are constantly doing the steps of critical thinking process. If you want to improve your critical thinking, you must also take a responsibility for your decisions. When people are responsible for certain activities or things, they approach decision-making more rigorously than when they are not responsible. Thus, critical thinking itself is more developed in situations where one is responsible for the outcome. The last, but not the least, accept the fact that you are not always right. I would say this can be harder than it sounds. People do make mistakes, but important is to accept it and learn from them. Therefore, we should always check our solutions, listen to other opinions, and consider them. Now imagine that you read some article at the internet and you want to decide whether the article is fake or real news. What kind of questions do we need to ask and answer in order to decide? The first important question is who published the article. It can be some well-known publisher or news company or unknown author. Then we should verify the relevance of the sources. We should check what references the author refers to. Are there professional or research articles, or author does not provide information about information sources? If there are no sources or the article refers to unknown experts, it evokes its unreliability. Then we should also think about intention of the article. Is the article aimed only at informing or tries to influence the reader's opinion? Does it contain a hidden advertisement? What is the target group? The important point is also to find whether the author or publisher represent themselves or someone else. As can be seen, asking and subsequently answering these questions are important parts of critical thinking, which help us to make the right decision. It is better decision making that is one of the significant benefits of critical thinking. In addition, critical thinking improves problem-solving skills and vice versa. It helps also shape our opinions by the fact that we should follow all recommended steps during the critical thinking process, which means that we should gather data, analyze data, interpret it, draw conclusions, and then decide. Focusing primarily on facts in critical thinking helps us to argue better. It also encourages curiosity, and by looking at the problem and information from multiple perspectives in critical thinking with the aim to solve a problem, it also enhances creativity. Of course, since we need to communicate our findings and conclusions to other people, critical thinking also enhances our language and presentation skills. It helps us speak structurally, consistently, and logically. Now, let's move to a relationship between critical thinking and learning. As shown in the slides, the relationship between these two processes is reciprocal. It means that critical thinking influences learning, and of course, learning affects critical thinking. On the one hand, critical thinking helps students understand the concept and draw their conclusions when doing their tasks. Based on some research, there has been a significant relationship between critical thinking skills and academic achievement proven. On the contrary, tasks for students in various subjects that guide them to gather information, interpret them, and make conclusions can enhance their critical thinking, leading to better learning. So let's talk about what we as teachers should do to increase our students' critical thinking. The first point is to focus on project-based learning. Using this method, students solve a complex problem over a period of time while they need to gain more profound knowledge. This approach gives students the space to fully develop their critical thinking. Project-based learning is often associated with teamwork. As was already mentioned, working in a team is the best way to learn to think critically. Teamwork is an essential part of our lives. We work in teams from childhood in kindergartens, schools, and subsequently at work. Through teamwork, students better understand what they are learning. Therefore, teamwork should be part of classes if we want to support students' critical thinking. To enhance students' critical thinking, it is also important to ask open-ended questions that guide students to provide reasons for their answers and decisions. The questions we should ask are, for example, could you be more specific, or can you give us an example? Are there any other points of view? Will you provide more information? Such questions will help students think more about their decisions or solution and help them learn to argue more. In addition to asking these questions, we should also provide time for students to prepare their questions and find answers. The next point is to give students authentic assignments. It is important that students come into contact with real assignments during their studies, because in this case they are better able to be aware of their role and responsibility associated with solving the problem. It is also good to give them the opportunity to communicate with task proposers, for example, representatives of companies, and get their feedback. The use of brainstorming in class is also a good way how to improve students' critical thinking. Brainstorming provides an opportunity for students to think about the problem but without some borders. They can suggest unconventional solutions and ideas, taking advantage of their creativity and fantasy. Of course, despite the relaxed atmosphere, the goal of brainstorming is to find a solution for a specific problem. Finally, we should ask students about sources of information. Students should learn what sources are reliable and how they can distinguish between untrustworthy and dependable sources. Based on these advices and critical thinking process, the assignment for students focused, for example, on cloud computing could then look like this. Select 5 cloud platform as a service software and compare them based on your chosen features. Identify each software's advantages and disadvantages and decide which software you would recommend to a small company and explain the reasons. After completing the task, we should also ask students about information sources or discuss different opinions of students on recommended software. Of course, tasks could be also presented as a team task. That was all from me. I hope you enjoyed the presentation, and let me close it with a quote from Martin Luther King Jr. The function of education is to teach one to think intensively and to think critically. Intelligence plus character, that is the goal of true education. These are references you can use if you want to learn more about critical thinking, and I would like to thank you very much for your attention.